Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again for making this one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app, and we'll keep sharing great conversations like the one we have today. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, advisor at Insight Finder, the system of intelligence for IT operations, and CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Now, you've heard me say multiple times, what can be predicted is better left to machines. One of the best applications of that statement is using data from past customer service interactions to understand how best to improve future interactions with the same customer. A few years ago, this use of machine learning seemed like science fiction. Today, it's nearly essential for every product and service company to avoid falling behind the competition. The data can be used to answer questions like who's most likely to buy again, who's likely to churn, which additional products to recommend, and what features to recommend to improve adoption. Today's guest is an expert in the field. Harish Batlapenumarthy co-founded Emtropy Labs 2 years back to bring AI-driven insights to customer success teams to deliver better customer experiences. Harish and the team realized the best way to understand the voice of the customer is by actually analyzing the voice of the customer. Before starting Emtropy Labs, Harish spent the previous 8 years founding and growing other AI-first companies, including Mimo's product studio, after doing time at Oracle as a product manager. Harish studied backpropagation in neural nets all the way back in the 90s at IIT Bombay when the field was new, before receiving his MBA from MIT in 2013. Without further ado, Harish, welcome to AI and the Future of Work. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about your background.
Thanks, Dan. First thing, I really appreciate this platform. My team and I both are thankful for this. You mostly covered the background. I'll try to keep it brief. Originally from India, immigrated to the US a while back, more than half my life now. Trained as a mechanical engineer, came here for an operations research grad program. Worked at Oracle as a product manager. So my career has been mostly around building, deploying, and selling complex enterprise software applications. That's what I really understand really well, and that's what I've been building most of my career.
Describe the founding vision for Emtropy.
Well, so like you mentioned, I've been dabbling in various AI-related ventures for the past few years. I started with trying to automate meeting minutes a while ago when this was not an easy thing to do. Now you have so many startups doing this. This was when Nuance was the speech transcription company standard. We tried to do something new at MIT with a couple of PhD students. We took it some distance. Google was actually interested in acquiring us, but it was a hard problem to solve around 5-6 years back. Then I tried spend approvals, again a complex problem. Glad to see some new startups trying to go after this as well. The way we kind of came into the vision of Emtropy was that I've always believed that workplace culture really trumps anything else that people go through. And big enterprises, especially fast scaling enterprises, struggle with this a lot. And given that there's so much data in the system today, we've kind of thought about how do we analyze this data and extract trends and patterns around group cultures in such a way that group individual performances could really go up. That was a very broad, high-scale vision with which we started this company. Very hard problem to solve. Realized it very quickly, and then we started looking at there are specific groups in an enterprise where we could probably really make this more applicable, which is where we kind of narrowed down to the post-sales customer interactions. The beauty about this space is that data is very clean, very high-quality data. The signal-to-noise ratio is low. Actually very high, sorry. And that's how we ended up where Emtropy is today.
So I shared a few examples of how customer data can be used to generate AI-driven insights. Talk us through that in more detail. Did I get it right? Or what are some of the other kind of KPIs that data from Emtropy can be used to improve?
Yeah, that's a great start. Voice of customer is what most companies have been interested in, and there's been many consulting gigs, consulting solutions, many companies which have been going after it, right? And primarily, and the most famous one, most popular one, is to review Amazon reviews or any other online reviews and try to figure out what the customers are feeling, what are they saying. The angle that we are taking is inside out, not outside in. This is more about the voice of the agents or voice of the employees interacting with the customers while keeping in perspective what the customer's feeling, right? So that is our angle. And in the process, we are trying to help these teams really mine loads and loads of data and kind of extract those needles from the haystack and help them really change the needle, move the needle for their teams.
So it seems like the use case that has been very popular early on is using transcriptions from SDR, sales development reps, or sales reps to understand how to better coach them. You're looking at it from the perspective of the CSM, the customer service management organization. How applicable are those technologies that are now being used on the sales side to what you're doing with CSMs?
Very applicable. I think broadly, horizontally, they're more or less very similar. Whatever Gong has been trying to do there, or Chorus, is what more or less what we're also trying to do on the customer service side. The use cases differ in the sense that what kind of criteria are you looking for? What are you trying to extract in a sales world versus a post-sales world? Right. Interestingly, post-sales interactions that customer support or service, and now increasingly success, they account almost 70 to 72% of all interactions a customer has with the company, right? So being able to mine that and look for specific criteria which really help these teams deliver outstanding customer experiences, that is what we're looking for.
So you mentioned data that optimizes signal to noise. And one of the problems I know I've faced in solving various problems across various companies is that oftentimes the signal to noise ratio is such that there are a lot of false positives. So for example, if you over rely on sentiment analysis, it can be very misleading because, just based on certain trigger words a customer uses, that may not be enough to indicate, their actual sentiment or, their actual level of satisfaction with a product or service. Are there any tricks you can share with us about how you mine across the variety of signals to optimize for fewer false positives?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and it is a really tricky problem to solve, right? So, in fact, we're about to publish a blog post on how we are attacking the customer sentiment problem, as opposed to what the traditional Googles and Amazons have already provided through their APIs. So the good thing about how our approach is it's very specific to this particular use case on how customer service folks interact with their customers. So when we're trying to mine for an example here is customer sentiment, we take a supervised learning approach. We're really trying to figure out what are the broad areas where there could be a negative or positive sentiment being expressed. We create tons and tons of training data, and we use that to be able to build these models, right? And then being able to test these models across multiple industry data sets, right? That is essentially how you keep going forward and try to get as generic as possible. But having said that, there are scenarios, there are circumstances where we have discovered that being able to build any predictive models like this is really hard and to generalize across multiple industries, so multiple customers. One classic example is being able to build a predictive CSAT model, for example, right? So you have all the CSAT responses that come back. The response rates are usually very low, 5, 10 to 15%. And so companies are actually interested to see the other 85% of interactions when nobody responds, what's happening there? How are they really feeling? So we've ventured into this territory. We've built some really powerful models to be able to predict that. But what we also learned is the practices, the products, and the processes are so different from company to company that being able to build a very generic model for a problem like this is next to almost impossible, right? So we'll have to build a custom model, but where you can bring value to the table is how quickly can you get something like that off the table while trying to customize it for that particular customer.
All AI is a data problem.
Yeah.
And all supervised machine learning is a labeling problem. Talk us through how and where, what are the data sources that you use? And then how do you scale the labeling process?
So the data sources are the customer service interaction data. This is primarily data from all kinds of ticketing systems and phone systems that these teams use. Could be Zendesk, Salesforce, Amazon Connect, what have you. We can take all of this data. The nice thing about this data, as opposed to highly noisy data like email and Slack that we were trying to go after earlier, is this is not as noisy. Right? It's very cleanly parsed, and you have the kind of data that you need, right? But once you have that, labeling is definitely a huge undertaking. We have dedicated internal teams. We do not outsource this aspect. We have trained these teams extensively on how to think about labeling, and we take it on ourselves. We also have some tricks where our users do label the data as well. They are annotating the data in some ways to make it even more authentic. That's how we approach this.
So you're giving them an interface to tag some kind of attributes of the conversation?
Yeah, so we do the first cut, and then we let the users override that when they want to override. But we make it very, very easy for them to do that. So we do get a lot of high quality overrides from them.
So you mentioned the challenge of relying on CSAT scores, whether it's NPS or otherwise, because the response rate tends to be pathetically low, usually in the low single digits. Are there any ways are you gamifying the process, or any tricks that you're doing to increase the response rate?
No, we are not focused on that. So that's probably our next phase of our journey as a company. So right now we are highly focused on being an analytics company, a predictive analytics kind of a company, but we are getting into the workflow zone as well, right? So at some level, gamification will help to improve the response rate. But even if you did, right? So let's say the response rate, there are companies where the response rates are 40%, even 30, 35%, right? The question is, how much of that can you trust, right? Can you really trust that when a customer says that this agent really screwed it up, is it because the agent actually screwed it up, or because they did not get the discount they wanted, right? When a customer says, I'm going to escalate this, I'm going to take you to court, I'm going to sue you, are they really going to sue you? Those are things that are not that easy. You do want to believe what the customer says. It's a very valuable signal. But what we believe in is that there is more signal in the actual interaction that took place than a point in time survey, which people may respond a day later, or even 5 days later. So there's a lot of value in the actual interaction that happened. So we are mining the interaction data to get all of these signals.
And CSAT is often artificially skewed by the fact that if you respond, you're likely polarized. It's either because you had a very positive or very negative experience. So it doesn't necessarily represent a true assessment of the healthier customer population.
Yeah, I think that's where some people in the industry have slowly graduated to the NPS scores, right? Now, the NPS, of course, has a lot of pros and its own cons. There are people who don't like it as well. So we've evaluated all of this, and where we are kind of moving towards is what we call the customer effort score, right? Because whether you like CSAT, whether you like NPS, whatever you like, across the board, across the industry, everybody agrees that what you want to lower is the customer effort, right? Which is a great predictor for customer happiness. And how would you do that? How do you even figure out how much effort they had to put to get a problem resolved across multiple channels, across multiple agents, across over time? That is a good problem to solve, and we are more focused on that than trying to replicate CSAT or any other thing.
So one of the challenges of building predictive models based on some of the data sources that you shared are that bias tends to creep into the data sets in unexpected ways. And I'll give you an example. If you want to build a model predicting, let's say, the customer's churn rate, and most of your samples are taken from a representative population of the customer base, which, let's say, for a tech product, is likely to skew male. Just let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's probably true, but males may be overrepresented, and let's say underrepresented minorities may be underrepresented in the sample size. And so you may end up predicting that, let's say, there's less accurate data when it comes to underrepresented minorities or females. How do you mitigate the impact of biased data leading to poor quality decisions?
Yeah, I think there's two angles there. One is there is a set of predictive models you could build where for want of a better word, they are just more sophisticated regression models, right? So there is no supervised learning there. It's all unsupervised. You're just building regression models. So there, the bias could creep in because the data has a bias, right? Not because you are labeling it differently. But when the data has bias, you got to live with it. It is what it is. So if I send out 100 customer surveys and 15 responded, and out of that 15, 11 are male and only 4 are female, and I get to see that data and I train my model based off that, yeah, it is going to be biased towards the male responses. There's not much you could do there, right? Where you could lessen the bias is when you're doing the supervised learning approach, right? So our biggest use case right now is actually not even the CSAT automation. The biggest use case where we get most customers is where we try to automate their audit process. So when they do this, the QA audit automation that we are going after, right? So as agents talk to customers, there is a process where you sit down and actually listen to the call and you evaluate the entire transcript or even the email and chat transcripts to see how well they've interacted with the customer, right? So that is a very tedious and laborious process, which is what we have completely automated right now, right? So if you were to take that and you were to build a supervised learning model approach to that, yeah, you're sitting down, you're labeling, there is bias creeping in, very hard to undo that bias. So what we offer our customers is there's 2 different levels of models. One is where you're doing a very high level regression model where the bias the model has is the bias that the data has, and we're not introducing any bias. But when you go to the supervised approach, there is a risk for that introduction of bias from our side. We try to negate that as much as we can by having a very diverse set of labelers and also allowing our users to override whatever we have found. That is one way we are trying to attack it, but yeah, it's definitely a hard problem.
That's a good approach. Intentionally hiring a diverse set of labelers. I think
Yes.
We talk about the 3 principles of responsible AI.
Yeah.
AI should be transparent. When it's being used, it should be apparent to whoever it's impacting.
Yes.
It should be explainable, and it should be configurable. So no black boxes. And to the extent it makes bad decisions, there should be instrumentation that allows for an updating of the parameters to be able to make better decisions moving forward. What is your perspective on what it means to practice responsible AI? And is there anything that you do intentionally as an organization to ensure that AI is practiced ethically or responsibly?
Yeah, responsible AI is absolutely super important. In fact, it's not even a question of ethics, or it's not even a question of a soft thing. It's actually a business question, because if you're not able to prove that this is how a decision has been made, you won't get business. Your customers won't trust you, and you're not making money, right? It's just good business sense to be able to be as transparent as you can, so they trust you. And everybody knows. I mean, people are smart enough now to know that nothing is 100% accurate. Even humans are not 100% accurate. We all have our own biases as well. So they do. I think they're okay so long as you're being transparent, and even if you're 75%, 80% accurate. What the world is looking for, at least in our particular use case, is how directionally correct we are, rather than are we corrected on every instance, right? This is not like a bot taking a pizza delivery. If it screws up the address, pizza goes to somebody else. But in our use case, thankfully, we have to be directionally correct, which is what we really focused on. And the way we try to deliver that to our customers is we try to incorporate explainability into all of our UI and all of our models. Hard to do. We cannot do it for every model right now, but like you said, it's a black box. Sometimes we don't understand, but we are building in that explainability part. The other piece is about when the model deviates from what it should have been, right? So we diligently maintain a list of all those deviations, and every week our users get a report of where things went wrong, how we are trying to catch up to what went wrong. And that's where we try to practice transparency.
One of the important questions that every vendor who's using data to make automated decisions should have to ask and answer is, what could go wrong? And I'll tee this one up. 2 hypothetical examples for Emtropy. Let's say an automated decision predicts that a whole category of customers is less likely to churn, and they end up churning. So obviously there's business risk, or potentially, let's say you're transcribing CSM conversations, and We know that transcription quality tends to be poor for people who speak softly or for people with accents. And, let's say it could lead to performance reviews that that lead to lower scoring or imply less poorer performance for either females or people with accents who speak softly or don't speak the same quality of English that transcription is best for. So two hypotheticals where the impact of a bad decision could be significant. What do you think about? Are those right, or are there other ways where if something went wrong, the impact on your customer could be significant?
Yeah, this is definitely a valid concern that we have, right? So that's also why when you say responsible AI, it's not just about being responsible in how we show our models or the output of our models to the customers. It's also about how we even deploy our models, right? So internally, we have a really high bar for before we deploy anything into production. We try to at least touch 75 to 80% accuracy, depending on how you define the accuracy for that model. We do extensive internal testing. We open it up to our users and ask them to test. They do the testing. But you're right, though. This is a hard problem to solve because every supervised learning model has been trained on the past, right? But the new data is continuously coming, right? New SKUs are being released, new people have been hired, new customers are being onboarded. The way they talk, everything could drastically change, right? So the model drift is a reality, right? And so it is for us to be on top of that and continuously retune the models, which is why AI in the enterprise, in the sense of application layer, is a hard problem. It's not going to be easy, especially when you depend so much on conversational data, and which changes so drastically. It's also a cultural component there. The risk is definitely there. There's no way to minimize that. It is up to the vendors for us to be on top of what's changing. It's not our customer's job. They are doing what they are doing. We are selling the tool to them with a particular premise, a particular hypothesis. It's on to us to be able to stay as close to that hypothesis as possible. And when we veer away from it too much, it's also on us to kind of tell them, hey, this is what's happening on this model. It's not working out. So you'll have to, think carefully about the decisions you're going to make based off of this model.
So we're talking about ways to make the role of the CSM, the customer service management agent, better, deliver better customer experiences. But let's fast forward, call it, in 5 or 10 years, these models get so accurate that maybe there won't be a need for a CSM. Defend that statement. Is there a time in the future when the role of the CSM will go away because we've gotten so good at predicting behavior, we can automate around the need for a CSM?
Yeah, I guess people would probably want to be in a state like that, but at least I don't see that coming. I think it's not a good way to say this, but we need support, right? So no matter what you do, even the best designed products like Apple need support, right? So the day the world would not need a CSM is the day when a product is so perfect, and when something is wrong about it in terms of operational thing or even understanding from an FAQ standpoint, it can just correct itself, or it can just update its user so seamlessly that a product development is evolved to that stage is when you may not need backend support to be able to support that product, and that is a good dream to have, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that. This is going to stay. This is going to exist, and as you have seen over the last 5-10 years, people have tried to completely automate the human support agents out of the equation. So the whole bot thing that kind of exploded, but that hasn't succeeded as much, right? So many of these companies have pivoted. They're doing various other things. So the way we see it, the way we understand the industry, humans are here to stay. We will all need this support. Some of the easier to do things may get automated, but in the next 5-10 years, I don't see that totally. Even when GPT-4, GPT-5, even the most advanced models being ready, I don't think this is going to happen that easily.
So you've been in and around both the opportunities, but also the challenges of AI for, I think about a decade. So I'd love to get your perspective on, let's say in another decade, let's say we're having a version of this conversation in 2032. What's one behavior that's commonplace at work that today would seem like science fiction, independent of what Emtropy is doing, just in terms of of culture at work?
Yeah, this is a tricky question. Yeah, there's two flavors to this that I would like to answer this in. One thing, of course, in a funny way is that no matter a decade from now, 2 decades from now, even we go to Mars, I think Microsoft Excel will stay. I don't think that's going anywhere, right? So we've all been living through that. It's going to stay. Uh, but yeah, so what I want is different from what I think is going to happen 10 years from now. And I'll say what I want. What I want is that having lived through this whole enterprise application space, we are nowhere close to the ideal state, right? It's still really hard to be able to, for a company to adopt a new enterprise application, to be able to use it nicely, very easily, collect data, have enough actionable insights from all of this data to make their life easy. Even today, people have to touch multiple systems. The whole BI thing, BI revolution that was supposed to make our life easy never really took off. And famously, you and I have been around for a long time. Larry Ellison said this in like 2002 or 2003. He was like, the whole world is about disaggregation and aggregation. So in 3 years from now, there's only going to be Oracle and SAP. And people at Siebel and PeopleSoft were pissed off, but he made that happen. It was just on Oracle and SAP. But then as cloud revolution took off, you had so many others like Salesforce and everybody else coming in as well, right? So the enterprise application layer, I think, keeps on going through these cycles without any true major innovation completely disrupting it. Other than cloud that happened in the back end, we haven't seen a major disruption here, right? And I do wish for that. I do wish for a space where scalability is super duper easy. You have the same software that can be used for a very small startup to a large enterprise. That is impossible today, but I really wish we could get there. Actionable insights are very, very easy to generate from the data. So people are super efficient at their work. That is not true today. That was not true 20 years back, not true 30 years back. I hope it is true 10 years from now. That is a hope though, which is, I hope we get there. But what I think is going to happen is we'll probably see more and more investments into this 3D metaverse, Zoom kind of things. This conversation that you're having will probably be between some 3D versions of us in some kind of metaverse. I think that's more likely to happen. Less useful for any company to improve their operations, but more fun. But I think that's probably more likely to happen.
I'll note this podcast is not sponsored by Microsoft, and if you're if you're out there developing an alternative to Excel, come on the program and you can challenge Harish. Good stuff. Well, Harish, it's about all the time we have for today. Where can our audience learn more about you and Emtropy?
Well, we are on website Emtropy, EMTROPI, so PY. So there's Entropy with the M. Please check us out on our website. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Twitter at Emtropy Labs. We'll be glad to follow up. We'll, of course, love to have some inbound customer leads. So we really appreciate that. Thanks again, Dan. This was great talking to you.
Thanks for coming by and hanging out. I really enjoyed this one. Gosh, that's a wrap for this week. This is your host, Dan Turchin of AI and the Future of Work. But we'll be back next week with another fascinating guest.